Hello everyone! No, I'm not dead. I haven't retired, I haven't quit making videos, I haven't stopped flying, I didn't leave without a trace. The weather just stinks, and I really haven't had much to put together. You know, I don't look for reasons to create videos, although I do think there's a few videos I do need to make that are kind of setting up your quad videos. I'm getting the same sort of questions, especially with these little whoops, you know, about props in, props out. That's reversing motors in BL Heli. I think that's one thing that I need to cover. But I've had a few questions about, you know, if I've stopped. I think it's been about 12 days since I last posted a video, and I've been somewhat active online. I would say I've been reduced, but not for any reason other than I just haven't been feeling it, I guess. You know, I haven't been outside to fly at all. I have flown inside. That's part of my daily routine. But I guess I just took the opportunity with the terrible weather to kind of pull back a little bit and not necessarily do something else, but to take time. I think the best way I could put it is just take time, because we do have a very busy schedule. As some of you know, I have 3 kids. Many of you probably know that, and they're very active in a lot of sorts of extracurricular activities as well as school activities. My daughter placed in robotics club today. She would not tell us what place, but she was quite proud of herself. That's our middle daughter, or our middle child. She's 11. But they swim, they do baseball, they do tennis, they do piano and cello and guitar and chess club and math club and robotics club and band, and they have friends and sleepovers. They're generally at our house, and then my wife is very active professionally. We've had we about once every 3 weeks we have a work event, either on a weekend evening or during the weekday. I've actually got one coming up myself on the 4th for an annual meeting, so it's a pretty big deal. Lots of people will be there for that, so those things can be fun. But I just took a moment to pull back a little bit. And before I lose everybody, since I've already shown you this, you'll probably notice this blue piece here. I don't have a Thingiverse file for you, but I did notice with this frame when I had crashes that the flight controller would become dislodged from the rubber grommets because of that flex in the frame. It could be that I just need to boil the frame to make it flat again. But instead of doing that, I just put that little 3D printed brace. That brace is actually part of the Miracle Whoop. You remember the Caddx turtle for the Beta 75 that came way up out of here? Well, there's one version of that that had a real thin base that was in a triangle shape that you mounted here on the bottom. And I just chopped part of that off before I printed, so I printed about 5 or 6 of these. I don't know why I printed 5 or 6, but it did. Of course, this is the Beta 65 Pro 2. No, Beta 75 Pro 2, sorry. And then I modified it with this canopy and that $19 camera that... It might be mildly better than, say, the Mobula or something like that, but it's sure not worth $19, and you guys came to essentially the same conclusion that I'd come to, but I didn't share. At least I don't think I shared in that video. Some things I should do. One video that I'm thinking about making is on this thing, because as you can see, it's fragile. They need to have it printed right up here, fragile or something like that. Every hoop on a very mild crash broke. I think I'm going to do that video next, because I think that's something that needs to go out so that people who are looking to do any research on this don't expect these hoops to last more than the most mild of crash. This isn't the lightest machine. You know, we've got a traditional 3-layer stack if we include our Caddx board. It weighs, my recollection is it weighs somewhere in the 70 grams. I could be wrong there, but it's not light. It's not like these by any stretch. It's not light like the Mobula 7 HD. And I had one mild crash. I wasn't even flying hard. Bumped into the treadmill, probably bounced off a nightstand and then hit the floor. And yeah, pieces. So I think I'm going to do that video next. So if you see this video and you've watched this far, you won't need to watch that video. But if you hear people talking about this, you might let them know. You know, I passed this information on to a maker fire that the ducts need to be a lot stronger. They might as well take them off. And they said, well, can you fly it outside? Well, yeah, I can, but it's been like, it's either like 38 degrees and the wind howling and it feels like 16 or something like that, or it's like 4 or 5 degrees and it feels like 4 or 5 degrees. Our weather's been terrible, and we got snow again today, but it was kind of less than a dusting, I would say. You know, it blew through the air. But anyways, the weather this winter has been much more traditional for the Midwest, at least in my location. I've got other things to show you here. I didn't want to waste your time with this video of, you know, I'm not dead. I've been doing a lot of flying with different Mobula style of setups, I would say, testing those props, the gym fan, I don't have the TBS one out. Here's TBS 4-bladed props. I've got another one here. I don't know what happened to the rest of the bits for that. I do have the 31mm props. I haven't gotten around to flying those, but there's this is a 65, which I think a lot of people have made. And it's just a US 65 frame with Mobula parts in it. And in my particular case, I use 14,000 kV motors just to yield more flight time. Good fun still. This one hasn't, you know, nothing like this has come to market from Happy Model. I'm not certain we're going to see it. I think they may have moved on. But I've been flying various props. I don't have any of the 3-blade TBS props. I've said this a few times in a few segments on, oops, I just dropped one, on Facebook. And the gem fan and the TBS props tend to rub on the V3 frame, which is this one. You know, it's got the bigger battery tray. It came on the trash can. The Happy Model version. So it tends to rub on the ducts, and as you can see, mine do not. That's because I've trimmed those. So the TBS props and the gem fan props rub on the V3 or trash can frame. That kind of bums me out a little bit. I don't know who to really holler at that. I think Robert Thompson did a measurement and showed him at like 41.3 millimeters. So it seems as though these companies might not be making 40mm props. And I'm wondering if they're toying with the whole, you know, thrust stand sort of stuff. Oh, if we throw an extra 0.5 millimeter on the prop, then we get these sort of numbers. So I don't want to say that. I do like the 3-bladers that's on this one, although I don't like this because I can feel this a little bit in flight. So I kind of wish I could come up with a mount that would clip on. Here, let me just get a regular frame. Okay, here's a blank frame. So we have this little slot right in here, and we have these 2 bits up here. I wish we could make a print like this that would fit the G&B 2S 300s and 350s and the RaceDayQuads and the TBS. I think that's all. Make those 300s and 350s because I do like to fly those, and I have a whole bunch of them now. I have about as many of those as I do 1S sticks, but to where we could mount something like this a little bit closer up to the prop line to where they clip on this bit here and this part that I've got this finger on. So then we would just clip these parts off, and then we put that mount right between there. I think that would work. But if you look at the width of the mount, we might have to thin this out a little bit. I bet you good old Robert Thompson would be up to doing something like that. It might be too wide, but if we clip it down, there might be a way. And I've seen a few that kind of clip around these edges, but I think they're made for the Beta 75 frames. That's why I was kind of looking at it. So I do like these props in this configuration, the V2 configuration. I just don't like the battery kind of being so low. I've gotten so used to it being up high and tucked. Even if you're flying, well, not in that configuration. In this configuration, I just like how that flies and feels. This is my original Mobula. As you can see there, we got cracks. We should have cracks and glue on all those. Still flies fine. One of the things I'm hearing a lot about with these Crazy Bee F3 and F4 flight controllers is a lot of people are either killing motors or they're killing an ESC on the flight controller or they're on the board. And I'm wondering, and I would hypothesize, that it has to do with air mode and not disarming fast enough. I think it's something that everybody needs to get quite used to, and it's something I've mentioned. I think I mentioned it in my x-lite video, that we need to be able to disarm really quickly. So this is how I have that. This is my arm disarm switch up here on the x-lite. This is my flight modes. This is beeper and flip over after crash. And one of the things when I pinch. So if any of you have heard that you can't pinch with the x-lite, that is not true. I think too many thumbers did reviews and said you couldn't pinch. They need to stay in their lane, bro. Anyways, I've wanted to say that in a video for a long time. I'll probably cut that out. But anywho, so I wanted to be able to arm and disarm really quick. I've always felt that that was really important to me, maintaining the equipment. When a prop is in rotation and powered and it hits something that stops it, that causes a voltage spike, and if you're already on the verge or your ESC maybe isn't all that healthy, or you're pushing the envelope of how much the ESC can handle, that voltage spike could be what causes it to die. Also be careful when you're doing turtle mode or flip over after crash that you're just bumping the stick. See if you got any movement in your goggles.
Something else that I'm again hypothesizing is if we go down in our house and we're like partially on a blanket or a piece of furniture that's a little bit soft and we're getting some prop resistance, are we doing some damage slightly with turtle mode? So something to consider, because I have all these whoops that I've had. I mean, some of these are Franken-builds. Most of them are Franken-builds. And I've got others sitting around. I fly one of these every night, whether it's, you know, the 65mm version or the 75mm versions. I fly one, probably 3 to 4 batteries every night before I go to bed. It's just, you know, 15 minutes right before I go to bed. It's a nice, fun, relaxing thing to do. I don't fly like you see in the videos. I kind of putz around and just kind of explore. Sometimes I race around. I just fly for fun. You know, I'm not trying to do anything. But I do read about a lot of people killing motors and ESCs, and I'm wondering if it has to do with disarm. So depending upon your radio and your hands and how you manipulate things, you may find that you need to do something in order to be able to disarm quicker. And I think that might help. I know that with these tiny little whoops that sometimes when we hit something, we just want to keep going. If you're in angle mode, you can probably get away with that. If you're flying in acro mode and you're up high, I would have to agree. Like if you're outside, if you're up high and you hit something, you probably don't want to disarm right away, because if you get hung up in a tree and you disarm and you don't have the disarming angle set to 180 and you don't have turtle mode, you can get hosed up in that tree, and disarming can be the thing that's kind of the difference between being stuck up in the tree and being able to manipulate your way out of the tree at possibly the cost of a motor ESC. So I understand why you wouldn't want to disarm when you have a bumper crash immediately, but I think in the cases of being inside or if you're flying lower outside, we need to be we need to think about that a little bit. So if you're somebody who's been going through motors and ESCs, if you could please test that and report back to us, that would be great. I'm getting closer to doing a face, or I don't know what you call it when I would appear on camera. I got this, the C920. Did a bit of research, and this was wildly hailed as one of the better webcams. Maybe a webcam isn't the best solution, but from what I saw, it was pretty darn good. Now I'm just looking for some sort of articulating arm. I don't have much space back here. I've got a little less space than a cafeteria table. That won't make sense to many people unless you kind of went to a country school or something. We used to have individual tables that had to be set up every day. Typically, the seniors would go out and set up the cafeteria, and then they would go back to class, and the seniors would eat late. But they're, I don't know, it's 6 foot long? Well, yeah, I'd say it's a 6 foot long table, probably 3 foot wide. And I don't have use of all that space because I've got stuff stacked up all around it, all the stuff you can't see has got stuff stacked up. But if I can find an articulating arm that can clamp on this desk and then a long USB cable back to my PC, I hope to be able to incorporate maybe a little bit of that. Really, my goal is, if I appear on camera, is more about doing live streams. I'm hopeful that one day I'll get to the point where we can do live streams and we can just, you know, chat and questions and do whatever you do on a live stream. That seems very appealing to me because it's one of the things outside of flying that I really, really enjoy about making videos is being able to talk to people. Scooter Pie, who just changed his YouTube name. I'm sorry, I've already forgotten it. Props in or props out. I think you've changed your name to that. Don't we talk about baseball every once in a while? Yeah, I think we do. So I'm a baseball fan, although I don't get to watch as much as I would like to. And I played in college, and so I always enjoy that. So I enjoy sports. I just don't, you know, I'm an older guy. I don't watch as much as other people that have more time. But anyways, I got this, so I'm inching closer to doing something that many have asked. So many have asked about the diameter of the motor shaft on the Happy Model motors here, and I've reported it, I think, twice. And I put it on Facebook, so just so for everybody can see. So it's a 1 millimeter. I have 4 other motors, not just on this quad. I have 4 other spare motors, and they all measure the same. So if you're wondering about using these motors for other purposes, which I know where you're headed, and I'm excited to explore that too, as soon as the weather clears, that you might be able to use that on some other sort of configuration. I'm not sure about the efficiency when running larger props, but that's all part of the tinkering in this hobby, right? I did recently have one criticism or comment about the Mobula HD about the noise, and you know, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to please everybody, and I really try to put forth the best video that I can that will answer as many questions as I can. And that way no one's waiting on me to get back to them. They can watch the video or choose not to watch the video and get the information that they want. That either pushes them in a different direction as far as what they were looking to buy, or it gives them the information that they were looking for, what have you. But I included the sound on that video, and a lot of people didn't like it. I reduced the sound, the volume level, 80% before I uploaded it to YouTube. And in my headphones, it sounded pretty okay. And a few people, I would say I think there's like 300 comments on that video. I would say about 7, maybe 11, somewhere between 7 and 11 people really commented strongly that they couldn't stand it. The most common thing was a dentist drill, and I get that. It's not a pleasing sound. But the reason why I left that audio in, and I was a little bit sarcastic in what I said about enjoying the audio, I don't think that came through very well, was it answers some questions. No, micromotors do not sound good on board audio, at least with the Caddx Turtle or Caddx Turtlet. I don't know what they're calling it these days. With their microphone, micromotors just sound bad. Matter of fact, last summer or something like that, I did a video where we had a Mobius on top, and the audio sounded better than it does with the Turtle, but it didn't sound great. And that could be the tune. Was a little bit noisy or grindy. Could have been the motors themselves I chose to use. So in general, that audio isn't going to be all that useful, I don't think, for us when it comes to micros. It's there. You can choose to leave it. You can choose to take it off and save yourself maybe a gram of weight. And maybe you just want to leave it just in case. So if the quad's sitting somewhere, that's when it does work well. So if the quad's just sitting, it's not armed, it's not spinning the props, it does pick up the ambient noise around the machine pretty well. So if somebody's talking in the area or something like that, that sounds pretty decent. I don't think it's a terrible mic. I just don't think it's a great mic. And that combination with our micromotors, it just doesn't sound very good. But if I wouldn't have put that audio in there, I would have had many people say, which Turtle version is it? I can't hear it. Or what's the machine sound like? Or so there's all these combinations of things I'm trying to answer by just leaving the audio in, but I do get that it wasn't very pleasing. I also got a critique about all the links in the description, and that again is to answer that question so people don't have to ask me or wait on me when they leave a comment. Pretty much if anything appears in a video, I can just about guarantee that I'm going to have multiple questions about that, even if I don't talk about it. Or if I mention something that doesn't appear in the video, it's going to be asked. So the best way to clear up or give that information out is just try to make sure it's linked in the video. And I've actually done a pretty poor job of that when it comes down to it. I know when you have all those links, it feels like and probably looks like a money grab. But I'm not in this for the money. I don't know how to put this. My job and my wife's job pay us very well. I'm not looking to make any more money than we're already making. I think we're compensated appropriately, and I think our kids are spoiled rotten. I think I've been able to do everything I wanted to do to help my kids and my family have the life that I wanted them to have growing up, dreaming about those things. So this hobby isn't about money for me. It's not about fame. It's not about fortune, is the cliche, right? I just kind of like it, and so I wanted to make videos. And I wanted to make videos because I thought it was hard. And at the time when I started making videos, it was pretty hard. I tell the story quite a bit. I don't have one of the boards around, but like one of these old brush boards like this, Sky or Sky. The first time I tried to bind that board, I'd built up a machine, and it was DSMX, and I tried to bind it. It took me, I think it was 10 to 12 hours, 10 to 12 working hours. I kept trying, and kept trying, and kept trying just to get that bound to my radio. And I'm sure I spent way more time than a lot of other people, but that was one of those events that caused me to think, you know, this information has got to be available. Because I spent all sorts of time looking online to try to find somebody who had done it with the radio. I was running a Devo 7E at the time, and could help me get over that hurdle, but no, I just had to kind of brute force it. So things coming up, yeah. I got a Tyro 79. Haven't flown it yet. Don't even know if it freaks out. Camera was dead. I knew the camera was dead after I plugged it in. No smoke or anything. We just didn't get an image. And initially I thought it might be something wrong with the wiring because the pins in there are kind of tricky. And you'll notice I've got the connector pulled off here.
And I did that because the wiring harness comes with a 4-pin connector, and this is only 3-pin, of course, so you can't fit the connector that comes with the flight control that comes with the kit that's supposed to go between the flight controller and the camera. It doesn't work natively, so pulling that off I thought was the easiest fix. I keep a broken camera around. It still powers up fine, but you can see it's kind of busted up. And then I plugged it in and I got an image, and I thought, oh great. I did have a short issue for a little while. I did sort out the short. It was kind of a curious short because it didn't happen right away. You could actually plug in the machine and I would get all the tones for activation on the ESCs, and I appeared to be set to fly, and then my smoke stopper would slowly light up. I was like, well, that's not good. I don't know precisely what it was, but I think there was something stuck to the bottom of the flight controller in a funky way, probably from the blue tack that I used to keep things steady or in place when I want to. I suspect I had a little metal shaving that was in here, and then when I stuck it on the flight controller, a little piece of this adhesive eventually stuck to it. I've had that happen once before, and after I had that short and was kind of stumped, it came to me during a night's sleep or something, and I just kind of rubbed this ball of blue tack that I use all over the flight controller, put it all back together, and it was fine. My camera's broken, $79 kit, probably flies okay, probably a pretty decent value. But the stock camera, I hear, is pretty bad, so plan to get a different one. Here's a little build. This is an Impulse RC Alien, Micro Alien. So this would be the smaller version of what many of those... Well, Steel flies one, wasn't he? Mr. Steel? Mr. Steve? I think everybody else has their own custom, you know, endorsed frames. But so I've had this built for a while, and I know there's at least one more in the wild. And yes, that's a Lumineer Axie antenna. If you're trying to save weight, I recommend those. They are the same weight as these ones from Banggood, or it's really, really close. It's been a while since I weighed them. This looks like it should weigh more, but I have a feeling the plastic around the Lumineer one is thicker, causing the weight to come in about the same. My recollection, it was about 1.3 grams, maybe 1.7. But as far as a circular polarized antenna, I do think these two are the lightest that you can get. Although I think this one's like $6 and that one's $19.99. So, But this will be coming up whenever the weather gets better. I did try out, some of you have been asking me to try out these motors. These are the RCX 1306 6000 kV. I'm sure someone else on another review channel will go out and buy these motors and review them before I get around to this, because you know, my weather's not going to get any better in the next week. I know through Sunday it's going to be terrible. It's currently Wednesday evening, so I'm just not going to get too much in the next week. And then it's going to take me, even if the weather gets better starting Monday, it's going to take me probably 4 days, I would think, at least, before I have done what I do in order to produce a review, which would actually not include the editing portion of things. So, but anyways, this will be coming. Top mount. A little bit of a curious build there. I'm using the Maytech flight controller. I think this is the 405. Yeah, I think it's the 405. Foxier, is that the Arrow? Or Sparrow? Anyways, camera. I got another custom build. Oh, here. This one's a little bit interesting. You might not have heard of this company. This is, well, hopefully you've heard of this company. RotorGeeks. This is the Zoot. And this is a 3-incher. And I've got the Airblade motors on there. You might not be able to see that real well. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus. There we go, Airblade. I think Mr. Airblade needs to switch that to white to make that pop off the blue. I do like the blue. I do kind of like the Captain America or Superman color scheme, but these are the 1404 4850 motors. And I've got a Caddx Turtle in there. This was kind of a compact build. You can see I've got a special little spacer I printed off in the bottom so that I could mount the board. It stays off the bottom except for that little connector right there it's just a hair or a paper slice away from actually being down on the carbon. And then we've got the Diatone Mini Mamba stack in there, and we've got our Caddx Turtle again. The VTX, which you can see is kind of coming out of here. That is the ready-made RC Cricket or Nano. I forget what they call it, but that's a VTX I've been wanting to try for a while. It's got an MMCX connector, so I could have saved myself, saved myself some weight by going away from the MMCX connector. But as I got to putting this together, and it's so tight in there, actually you can't see it, but my receiver is actually laying right there.
I mean, it's tight in there. I'm worried a little bit about a crash where I land on the top where the battery's mounted and doing some sort of damage to the stack. But I guess that's the risk I'm going to run here because I really want to explore this. I think it's an interesting frame. I am pushing its limits. I would not be surprised if I have a crash and I break an arm. And that would be my fault because I bought the thinner arms intentionally because I wanted to go for low weight. I knew what I was going to be putting inside, so I wanted to cut weight by going with the arms. The arms are an interesting cut. Hopefully this comes through in camera. Maybe, maybe not. You might be able to see that that's kind of a half piece right in here. There we go. And then as we rotate over here, you can see that it goes to a full piece. So right here where this center hole is, you've got two half pieces of the arms that overlap, kind of like they're just laying there like this. And then we've got the universal screws for our posts. Sorry, that was out of frame. For our posts that mount the rest of the arm. And it's the same in the front and the back, so it doesn't matter which way you mount it. Everything's universal. The only thing, well, not everything. The top plate is not universal. Obviously, you have the cutout there for the camera. It comes with all sorts of prints that I didn't put on that many of you might like to put on. I think I have them in a bag. Well, they're here somewhere. But again, I was going for weight and performance. I wanted to see what it was like if I try to pack all this stuff in and put on an HD camera here to see what sort of performance we can get in HD and how much fun that can be. So I did make some sacrifices, I guess, to how you might build it otherwise. But this, again, is the Rotorius Zoot frame. These are manufactured in England, I believe, or in the UK. So if you're not in that area, it might take some time to get to you, but pretty cool. I'm excited to fly it. Again, weather stinks. Midwest living. I do have a Rex 80. It flies fine. I'm not overly impressed with it. I'm not disappointed in it. I haven't flown it outside. I don't know if it has prop wash or drops an arm or yaw washout. I don't know if anything. I think the big thing that's going to make this pretty much outdoor only is the fact that it's got this Caddx EOS 2 camera in here. So you have a fairly, or at least for me, it's a fairly limited point of view. And it's also by default got a fairly high angle. I mean, if you can see that the screw hole is right there, and then as I turn it slightly, you can see where the bottom of the lens is. So the bottom of the lens is about even with the screw hole. That's the camera angle. So it's you know, that gets you to horizon, I think. That's fairly aggressive, and I think that's going to cause some problems for some people flying indoor. I struggle with it. I've been flying it inside anyways. Also, I carved a hole. I thought this was a little bit silly. They make a custom canopy, but they don't give us a hole to where we can get our USB plug in there. So I made one myself. It came pre-wired for DSM. I'm not certain why that is, but because I have that universal module on my x-lite, I put in one of my Spectrum receivers, bound it up, and it works just fine. It flies fine. Yes, it came by default with the props that far off the motors. I don't know why, but I don't want to say, you know, I don't want to be overly negative. It's just, I don't think it's going to outperform the trash can in any way. Just from what I've seen so far for outside flight. I'm not a big fan of the trash can 803 motors. I don't like that. I don't like having to set up throttle curves to flatten out what the motors do as far as being super responsive on the low end, but not having much more on the top end than an 802. So I'd rather just have the 802 and have it more smooth all the way through the throttle curve. And I find that these motors are nice and smooth through the throttle curve. They're 1103. They are different made motors, 1103 motors. And obviously they have those connectors on it, so that might be of use in other builds that you might have. I'm not certain about their efficiency yet. Typically with a 2S 300 milliamp battery, I can get, I'm not flying this one especially fast because of the camera and the camera angle, so I would say most of those flights are coming in around 3.5 minutes. But I'll, whenever I get a chance to fly this outside so I can get some more information about its outside performance, then I'll have something to produce on that video. I need to go faster. This is for a GearBest product. You might remember the Skystar's Bolt X120. Really fast 4S 2.5-inch prop micro. This is basically the next iteration of it. They've changed the arm layout ever so slightly. You see we're more rounded here. We've got a 32-bit ESC in the flight stack. We're soft mounted by default, and they upgraded to a Caddx camera. They also added the capacitor here on the back. Unfortunately, I've had this long enough where I did have a day of flying, and I bumped a tree, and I think it's this motor. Yeah, I think it's this motor that's now not producing enough thrust. It's kind of a strange little issue. It might be the ESC yet. I haven't tested it, but if you try to take off, like if you turn, if you arm, it'll spin up normally and it'll level itself out on the ground, like if it's sitting on the battery. But then when you start to give it thrust, it starts to dip towards that weak motor, and then it'll eventually hit a prop and flick out. So I've damaged the motor, the bearing, or something, or the ESC is possibly damaged. But I'll find out as I'm able to get outside more and fly more. Beta 85. I've flown this inside the house. I really don't consider it an inside flyer unless you're in a large industrial space or a gym, a warehouse, an armory, maybe a workplace that's big and a warehouse. It's 2 inches. It does fly nice inside from what I've flown. I really am disappointed in the canopies the Beta FPV continues to make. This is different and it's thicker material, and you can see I broke it pretty well. So I thought I had 2 breaks. So I broke this piece out here, and it was on a pretty mild crash because, again, I was flying this inside, and you can't really fly it fast like I normally do inside with all this weight because you're constantly having to arrest the weight. They did some nice things with it, but we'll fly it more outside when we do get time. But we want to let you know here that the HD version is coming. It got hung up in customs. I've had a few things get hung up in customs this year. I don't know if customs has changed their process or something. So the HD version is coming, and we'll take a look at that as well. Unfortunately, there was a series of problems with this particular product, both the standard version and the HD version, and it was touted as running 4S. Me personally, I don't see really a lot of use for 4S on 2-inch props, but maybe on quad blades. I don't know. I haven't tried a 2-inch 4S on quad blades, but you know, I'm not going to find out with this because they had some problems, and now they've changed the specifications of the website to where this is only 2 and 3S now. No more 4S, and I think that was kind of part of the hype behind this product, and it is quite flexible as far as the frame goes. You can really bend it up, and that may affect flight performance, but we'll find out. All I can remember in the moment without going back to the webpage and looking, I think this is called the Ghost. Essentially, it is just like the other one that I just showed you, and now I don't know where it went. Where did they go? Oh, it's right next to me here. Same motors. I don't think the flight stack is quite the same. Of course, they've got a different camera. They've got the EOS camera in here. I suspect that's the wide angle camera. In this one, I had to install my own receiver. This one came with a receiver. It's got a board here at the top that's full of LEDs, so you do get a nice illumination there if you choose to, or you need to use that, or it's something that you would like to use. But I do expect this to be fast, just because it's so aerodynamic. You know, if you can imagine this going through the air versus something that's, you know, like that. You know, it's got a lot more wind resistance there. We have some pretty thin arms, pretty light. It should be pretty fast, but there are some limitations, some give and take with this model. I can't say one way or another whether it's something you're going to use. It does have those ST1106 4500 kV motors. Those, I don't suspect those motors are 4500. I think they're higher than that, but that's what they printed on the label. And on 4S, those are some of the best 1106 motors around. Now, your mileage may vary. If your tune isn't very good, you could end up burning out a lot of motors. It could be that they're fragile. Like I said on this other one, it's running the same motors, and I just bumped a tree. I wasn't really going hard, and it ended up costing me a motor or an ESC. I'm not sure yet, but, you know, it's the downside. It's something I want to pass an information on. My Skystar Bolt X120 hasn't seen much flight time since last summer or last fall, but that's one of my favorite micros. I love the 2.5 inch. I love it on 4S. I use a pretty small battery. I'm not looking for long flight time. I'm looking for speed, performance, and agility, and if it only lasts me 2.5 minutes, I'm okay with that. Oh, I don't know if I should show you this. I've been experimenting with this. You might be looking at this going, oh no, yeah, it's brushed. I still think brushed has life. I think they're dead simple, and this is an alien board. And I've got it bound up, and I've been flying it around, and I've been working with the man, the myth, the legend himself, not fast enough, and through my inadequacies as an alien whoop pilot, I said, man, I really can't handle these rates. How do we change the rates? And so he and I have gone back and forth, and I actually should be working on that tonight. He actually changed I don't want to take any credit for this. This is not my work. I didn't do anything. when it comes to this product, that is all not fast enough. That's him all the way. This is his baby. He deserves all the credit. But through my inadequacies, he decided to spend all sorts of time writing code. And I think he's made a translation between Betaflight rates and the Alien board and having similar feel on those rates. So if you're a Betaflight flyer otherwise, because I use the same rates universally on all my machines, doesn't matter what I'm flying. Maybe that's a bad thing. But if you're a Betaflight pilot and then you go to something like this, you should be able to choose your rates. I don't know what else he's built into it yet. I need to get back with him and we need to do some work on this and have some more fun. But I'm excited to fly this around. This size is a lot of fun. You know, I've got a brushless one here right next to it. And, you know, some people will enjoy this more because it gives you a feeling that you're even smaller than something like this. So you can fly through, you know, bar stools and tiny little cracks. It just might make you feel smaller and give you more confidence. But I do think brush still has life. I think that, is it multi-GP? Still has a brush league. So, you know, as long as people are still interested, I say go for it. And from what I understand, the Alien boards, they are none better. So I'll fly it more and I'll get with Travis. We'll get it all hooked up, set up, ready to go. So if you missed it, we've got a host of new batteries that have been coming out. And I think most of them are probably manufactured in the same manufacturing house. But I brought a few of them out. And there's one out here that I don't recommend. And I brought it out because I don't recommend. And that's the Beta FPV. I don't think this one performs nearly as well as any of these others that you see out here. So I'm going to take this off screen now. Unfortunately, Beta FPV, their batteries aren't as good as they once were. If you have them, I hope you're enjoying them. But I think if you're going to make an investment in batteries, I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting any of the Beta FPVs at this time. Now, all these other batteries out here, I think have quite a bit of value, performance, flight time, durability, longevity as well. Some of these have a longer life. Actually, most of them that are off screen, and we'll get to those in a minute, have a longer history, or I have a longer history of using them. But I thought, you know, these we'll start with because we're still, especially if you're in my area or areas like mine that it's still cold, we're still kind of in that whoop season. So whether you're flying a Tiny Hawk or a Mobula or a Tiny Leader by chance or a Beta FPV product, these are probably the batteries I would suggest looking at. And you do see I have one 3S battery, and to my knowledge, G&B is making the only 3S battery that fits in most of those machines in these trays that we have in the trash can and the Happy model. These will wedge in here. Hopefully I can prove this on screen. There we go, it's going. So it's tight, but it goes in. It's the only one that I've found that fits. Other makes and models do not. I'm not aware of RaceDayQuads having these yet, but if you find that I am wrong, it's very likely the same battery. That's not a disparaging remark for those of you that have heard it before. I suspect RaceDayQuads or RDQ, as you see printed on the label, they found a battery manufacturer that they like the battery too, and so they want their label on that battery and they want to sell it through their shop. No problems there. If you're near Florida or you like ordering from RaceDayQuads, great service, great support, active on Facebook for quick communication. Their orders ship really fast. I think the prices are pretty reasonable and competitive. Also, if you're in Canada, check out RotorGeeks. They have these batteries. So if you're flying a Tiny Hawk and you're looking for a 520, just like this one, they're in Canada, so you can probably get those a little quicker than you can a lot of other places. You probably also find they have other micro batteries. I suspect most of the quad shops that are at least online, they're a little bit more agile if you're online, are probably looking at a lot more micro batteries. They've gotten a lot more time in the evolution. I used to fly, if you've been around for a while, you know that it's probably about 2 years ago, I used to fly brushless indoor. Most of those were 2-inch props or smaller, and we were flying a lot slower then because the machines weren't quite as agile because of weight and really battery restrictions. You know, we didn't have all these batteries then. We had to fly flatter batteries to where some of your thrust was actually going down on the battery because it was a little bit bigger. But this battery, I've been flying this around with my Tiny Hawk. I've also been experimenting, with some of those Mobulas and running 2 of these. I know some people tend to run these when they are doing 1S indoors, so they're looking for a little bit different flight characteristics than I do. But I've got 6 of these. Oh, I've only got 5 out, but I've got 6 of these batteries, and they perform just like these do. So if you're looking at G&B and you're having a hard time finding these batteries, I would head up to RotorGeeks. RotorGeeks also carries the 300 from G&B, so you can find those there. There's probably other places as well. Back to these traditional stick-type batteries, Tiny Hoop came out with the 333 battery, and this one's made by MyLipo. This is one of the few batteries that aren't manufactured by G&B, in my belief, or opinion, or theory. And MyLipo, I have been a fan of MyLipo. Unfortunately, G&B has surpassed them when it comes to micro batteries that are multi-cell, but MyLipo batteries are good quality. There you see Jesse Perkins, the Tiny Hoop guy. He has trademarked that Tiny Hoop, but I don't believe he has caused any troubles for anybody that is saying Tiny Hoop online in any way. He's a big proponent of these, and he's got, of course, his own brand. And I believe the only place you can get these is tinyhoop.com. And surprisingly, I didn't feel the extra little bit of weight impacted how I would fly with these. Like, I've been flying them in those Mobula configurations, 2 of these, and I felt it performed very well. I actually enjoyed these batteries quite a bit. Of course, RDQ 300s versus the G&B 300s, slightly different configuration. That's a 260, sorry, I grabbed the wrong one. Slightly different configuration, and that's interesting to me. So, you know, my theory on RDQ batteries being manufactured by G&B, you know, that might not necessarily hold water, but it's very, very similar. This can be a benefit when you're plugging in your pigtail, depending upon your pigtail length, so it's something to consider. RDQ has a host of other micro batteries out there. You see we've got the 300, the 350, the 525, and these do all fit in that tray that I mentioned previously, the trash can tray. It fits in the tiny liter. It fits in the Mobula version 3 frame that I showed previously. There are others I'm not thinking of off the top of my head right now as well, that when you have that tray, they do all kind of fit in that tray. Of course, we have the TBS one here. You can find that in various locations. I do find when I order directly from TBS that the shipping costs are fairly high. Heli Nation sells these, I believe, as well, and as well as some of those props, the Gem Fan props, the HQ props that I showed earlier in the video. You can find those from Heli Nation as well. Let's see what else. Yeah, I think if you're flying Tiny Hoops and you're using 2S or 1S, I would check out these battery manufacturers. Maybe you have a shop favorite of your own, and I would look for these from there, because I think you'll enjoy flying those batteries. And as we work towards spring, you might be looking at multi-cell batteries from 3S to 4S for our micros. These, again, are ones that I can recommend. The China Hobby line batteries tend to run a little heavier, but I do think they have a little better protection. They'll keep their shape, and if you land hard on them in a bottom mount scenario or even a top mount scenario, I do think they won't take as much damage as you might find with other batteries. Now, if you go back far enough in the archive of videos when I talk about batteries, you'll specifically hear me talk about the blue and silver label and not the black and red label. It seems as though G&B has changed here in the last 6 to 10 months to where they're running them both and the quality of the battery is equal. So whether you're flying a 550 or a 520, they're going to be about the same. Of course, the milliamp per hour is different, so your flight time is going to be a little bit different. These actually come with 2 leads. I think the newer versions of these just have the XT30, something you need to note there. But these batteries I've been using for quite a while, and they've performed well. You also have the Indestructible Quads 550. I like that battery as well. The Infinity, which I didn't find in my bag because I don't have a lot of them, because the Infinity batteries are quite expensive. They also perform very, very well. This 650 that we have here, this is one I could only find, this is a 3S, I could only find on Amazon. So if you want to find a 3S 650, you'll probably have to go to Amazon. Of course, we've got an RDQ battery here, and then we've got a 4S 550. I've got a series of these. They've seen quite a bit of use in the fall before we got cold and I was no longer really flying outside all that much. I think these batteries perform quite nice, and as you see there, it's just got an XT30 on there, no XT60. It does seem as though G&B is changing the configuration of their batteries. It's interesting because you can still buy the 550s and you can also still get the 520s, and there are other configurations as well in 3 and 4S that you can find. that are pretty new on the market that you won't find that look in this configuration. So see, these are some of the batteries that I'd recommend. The tattoos perform fine. Again, I think they're a bit expensive. I do think that there are pluses and minuses. I don't want to get into where we talk about what battery camp we belong in. My personal opinion is the G&B batteries come in at a price point and at a performance point that I enjoy the most. The tattoos aren't far behind. I did read an article or a post from somebody about how tightly controlled the pricing from wholesalers or retailers on tattoo batteries are, and some shops have decided not to carry them possibly because of that. You might dig around if you want to know more about that. I'm just kind of spouting off or telling tales out of school there a little bit. This 3S battery does not fit in any of those tiny whoops. So if you're wanting to run 3S on, say, the Mobula 7 HD, that does not fit. Again, that's running the trash can frame or the Happy Model version 3 frame. But these batteries should be performing well. I haven't flown these hardly much at all. I think I've mainly I did a couple of hover tests with some of those quads I showed you earlier just to make sure they work. That was back when I was still flight testing the Mobula 7 HD, so those really don't have much use, but my expectation is that these are performing just as well as these, and that's primarily because of what I've seen with these batteries, the 300s, the 350s. They perform very, very well in a 2S configuration, and I can't see why these wouldn't perform as well. So if you're getting into 3 and 4S micros here in the future, we did have a quick discussion about 6S micros. We'll see how that evolves when we get, well, for me at least, we'll see how that evolves when I get more flight time outside. I don't know if any manufacturer is going to be coming out with 6X RTF machines, so we'll see about that. I do know that at least in one particular case, the front that we're going to see is going to still be 2S based, and that's pretty exciting because it means ultralights, so extra safety precautions. If you're asking about the G&B batteries for larger cells, I really can't say one way or another if they're still as good. I'm always cautious about those things of recommending stuff that I haven't personal experience with. I did have a few people online when I would make that little disclaimer about I don't know if they scale up all that well beyond the batteries that I've flown, and I've had several people step forward and take pictures and say, well, I can, and that's great. I don't have any problem with that. I'm a micro guy. That's what fits my life. That's why I've only really done micros. If you dig again far enough back on the channel, you'll find a dabbling of larger propped machines, but for the most part, it's all been 3-inch and less here on the channel. Last thing, I kind of want to recommend these flight stacks because they're so cheap, and I do think they're better than the SpeedX IS 100s. And you can get these in a lot of places, because then you don't have to do all the soldering of all the little jumpers in order to set it up that you do on the SpeedX. And I think this comes in at the same price or even less. I think this might be 46 bucks or something like that. So this is the Diatone Mamba mini stack. It's 2 to 4S. I believe it's a 25 ESC, a 25 amp ESC. Yeah, 25 right there. D-Shot 600, and tells you the size and everything like that. I do wish these were silicone based so we could mush them out of our way a little bit better. But I got another stack here. I want to use it again. I do find having all these right next to each other to be a little bit troublesome when it comes to soldering, but if you've got a fine point on your soldering iron, it should be fine. That is the TS80. The TS100 is also another really good soldering iron. Of course, you can build, as I did for many years, with a $10 soldering iron, and you'll be just fine. So, reason why I bring this up is I do like the stack. I like the fact that if you buy the right buzzer, you can just plug it into that connector right there. It's got everything I think that we need when it comes to a flight stack. This does not include the VTX, so if you're looking at the pricing between this and the SpeedX IS 100, that's something that you have to kind of compensate for, is the lack of VTX. I'm not a big fan of the VTX on the SpeedX, but you know, we make sacrifices, it seems like, no matter what we do. But I really want to find a frame, one that I haven't done before, that would fit the Caddx Turtle, as well as 2.5 inch props. I've got a number of 3-inchers that I think I could get a Caddx Turtle into, or run cam split. but I don't have any 2.5 inch. You know, these 2.5 inch prop ones are usually so tight, they're just, don't know if I can get that in there. You know, and if I don't have the VTX on top, where do I put the VTX? Because the Caddx would be up there on something like this. So I think I'm going to have to give up some of my smashed or squashed flight stack in order to get the turtle. But I'm all up for ideas. I'm sure many of you have seen frames. I haven't been following along. Like I said, in the last 2 weeks or so, I kind of stepped back a little bit and just kind of spent some more time being off the quad path, I guess, a little bit. You know, maybe kind of like going for a hike. It's not that you don't enjoy your life, but you like to step away from it every now and again and then go get some fresh air, a new perspective. But so I would like to build another one. Not that we'll be seeing it on the channel anytime soon because the weather stinks. Oh, also, so NJ and I were talking the other night. NJ Tech, if you don't know NJ Tech, he is an outstanding pilot as well as a reviewer. And he used to do helicopters, but he calls himself kind of a gun for hire. And what he means by that is he plays guitar in bands. And I'm not talking like, you know, a band that might play your local fair or something like that. I'm talking about big production bands. If you haven't seen his Facebook page, he's got pictures of the productions. It's major production, so he must be one hell of a musician. But anyways, he and I were talking about the aberrations of the lines on my video for the Mobula 7 HD version. And he sent me a screenshot, and he's like, I've got that on all of mine. And so I immediately had a moment of panic, and I went back and looked at old footage of this. And at first I didn't see it again, which is what I did originally before I produced that video. But then as I sat there and just kind of relaxed and watched it, I saw it pop up. And then it would go away, and then it would come back, and then it would go away. And I still don't know what it is, because I went and looked at other footage I had of the tiny leader. Whatever you think of the tiny leader aside, I know it had its issue. Beta, FPV, and full speed have kind of had a rough whoop go here recently. But the tiny leader doesn't have that, or at least I could not find it in the HD flight footage that I had of that. And I actually flew it more inside trying to reproduce or see that. And I'm wondering if it doesn't have to do with damage or something. Maybe there's a production run on the V2s that some have it and some don't, because I do see what he's saying, because the image that he showed me was exactly what I was seeing. Well, not exact. It was so similar. It looked nearly exact. And what I thought I had located with that little silver point down there in that wire, and that assumption that I made, was likely very wrong. It's probably something else. Maybe it's firmware. And one thing I looked at was on the Caddx website, it doesn't list the firmware, but I know there's a secondary firmware on it. Now, maybe the other firmware they produced came out when it was just V1, and so the V2s all come with that firmware. I don't know. I don't have a lot of close contact with Caddx, especially not in the last couple of months. So I shoot that out to you. What do you think? If you need to go back, I'll play. Actually, what I found was when I play the video and then I take a screenshot, I use VLC and it's got a screenshot built into it. When I use that screenshot, it doesn't appear as predominant as when I take a screenshot using the sniping tool or the snipping tool, to where you just capture the actual window rather than having the application that's playing the video take the screenshot. So I'll put that up either in a small box or I'll take up the whole screen so you can take a look and see what I'm seeing. And that did come from my Mobula HD. I do think that's all I have. I'm not dead. I'm not retired. I haven't quit. I'm still going to be making videos and having fun. I do hope to be able to do some live streams eventually. Unfortunately, I think it would be very inconsistent. I've been asked to be on a few podcasts. The Wildflowers podcast. They're still out and running strong. If you haven't checked them out and you like to listen to podcasts, maybe on your commute or while you're at work, you know, you have earphones in or something, check out the Wildfire. I can't speak. Check out the Wildflowers podcast. There's a few others. I won't say anything about those yet because I haven't been on. I'm hoping to be on. I've been asked to be on, but especially internationally, it's kind of hard because the time that I have is so weird. Like from 9:30 at night till whenever I go to bed is when I do this stuff, and then I fly over lunch. Sometimes I skip lunch and I fly. Sometimes I'll intentionally take a half day just so I can spend more time flying. So that's how I work this stuff. I covered the I don't want fame, I don't want fortune stuff. Yeah, I think it's kind of a catch-up video. I have no idea what I've called it at this point. I think I've got like 40 minutes. I'll try to edit that down under 30. 30 is probably too long for most people. So, yeah, I'm still here. All right. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.